Alright, a few weeks late with this one, but here we go. Assassin's Creed Shadows was declared so dead on arrival that the Prime Minister of Japan declared it an insult to his own country. Dire wolves have been brought back from extinction by scientists. Luigi Mangioni may actually receive the death penalty for his murder of the United Healthcare CEO last year, and it appears that Trump's new set of tariffs are actually going to prevent you from being able to buy a new Nintendo Switch. Alright, so let's start off Assassin's Creed Shadows. For years, the gaming community looked at the hallowed halls of Ubisoft's development headquarters and asked themselves, how long will it take these guys to make an Assassin's Creed set in feudal Japan? And in a sort of ironic case of be careful what you wish for, we got Assassin's Creed in feudal Japan, and I mean, it looks fine. I'm sure it's from a historical accuracy point. I'm not the biggest scholar on feudal Japan, even though people think that I'm that big on it. As far as I can tell, the biggest criticism launched against this game has to do with Yasuke and the development quality. See, I do believe that Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft really have a really talented development team. I actually bought Assassin's Creed Mirage like a week or two ago, and I want to play it, but I don't really think it's going to be as fun as a game like Odyssey or Origins. I haven't looked at the map for Shadows, but I'd imagine it's a return to that really big open world type of setting. And it looks great. I'll probably eventually buy Assassin's Creed Shadows and play it on the channel just to show you guys that I wanted to play it. But at the same time, I look at the development quality of this game, and then it's no surprise that you had, again, a very, woke sort of team of people developing it, and then it becomes no surprise that even for 13 years now, even with Watch Dogs, with E3 in the 2010s, it's been understood that whatever Ubisoft is going to release as a teaser for the game is almost never going to be the same type of quality we get in the actual game. Like seeing videos of explosions of exploding barrels from Assassin's Creed Shadows versus Assassin's Creed 4, which is over 10 years old now. Yeah, it goes to show that that's the difference between a gaming development team that actually cares about the final product and cares about the setting and the story versus just trying to make money and sell a point. Which brings me to the idea of Yasuke. So, for those who don't know, I think it's pretty common knowledge on the internet nowadays. Yasuke, about the 1500s, an African slave brought by the Portuguese Jesuits to Japan while it was under the rule of Oda Nobunaga, the first of the three great reunifiers of Japan. Yasuke, I don't think, was ever made a samurai officially, and as like the famous story goes, when he was brought into Nobunaga's court, Nobunaga had never seen a black man before, so he just decides to try scrubbing Yasuke's skin until it turns white. It's like, what? How did Eminem say it? Y'all act like you've never seen a white person before. When I went to Japan for the first time, my friends' kids had actually never seen like a European white guy before, so they were kind of shocked to see me. A couple people were actually. Basically, Yasuke was given a weapon by Nobunaga, that's about it. He wasn't officially made a samurai, because that typically means that you're given a sort of name, you're given a house, and you're given vassals that serve under you, but the reality is he was just a kind of security guard, if you will, for Nobunaga, or one of his retainers, I believe. He fought in one battle before Nobunaga, who had released Yasuke from slavery, had sold him back to the Jesuits, and then that was the end of his story. So, of course, I totally get it. A lot of people really wanting to make his story more legendary, make him a samurai, make him do all these special feats. I get why the development team did this, and it's not the first time that we've seen Yasuke depicted in games around feudal Japan. I hope people remember that he was also in Nioh from 2017. But of course, there's gonna be some people who just don't like the idea, maybe they're not familiar with the historical accuracy of the time, they just think, okay, wokeism tries to insert racially diverse characters into settings where they don't belong, therefore Yasuke doesn't belong in feudal Japan. Not that simple. It's an over-mythologization, it's exaggerating his story. I honestly haven't looked into how Yasuke is depicted in the game enough, and that's actually probably why I'm gonna eventually buy the game and play it on the channel so I can examine for myself along with you guys to see if the game is actually that bad. But as far as I can tell, this is just an attempt at trying to take a historical story and exaggerate it, which, by the way, is what Assassin's Creed does. I get it, you could just take maybe a story of an actual samurai who lived in that period. Personally, if I was going to make a story set in the Warring States period, I'd probably choose the story of Miyamoto Musashi. I mean, again, he's just legendary enough, but attested enough, that who's to say you can't sort of insert some story about him being in the Assassin Brotherhood, or at the very least during the time when Musashi was alive, because at the very least you can then introduce Musashi as a side character that relates to the story, kind of how Leonardo da Vinci was there in the Ezio trilogy. So I wouldn't say that just on the surface of hearing that Yasuke is in the game, and that apparently he's gay, and that his story is wildly exaggerated. I think that's the weakest of the criticisms you can make about the game. I think the strongest criticism is really just that the game's quality is really bad. Again, the development team can clue you in onto maybe their more political and virtue signaling objectives for the game. I understand that, but still, the idea that Yasuke is in the game is not really a problem for me. Apparently Shigeru Ishiba, the Prime Minister of Japan, basically said that it depicts Yasuke destroying certain relics in a temple somewhere in the game. And again, this is one of those things where the Japanese, I love them, they're wonderful people, but they need to understand that this is just a game. It's not actually real. I'm pretty sure the Italians are not going to get upset that Ubisoft made 3 games showing quite blasphemous accusations against the Catholic Church that they are apparently in league or in bed with this Assassin's Creed equivalent of the Illuminati. I don't buy that as something that Ubisoft really cares about, nor should anyone care about. So if Ishiba-san is actually upset at the treatment of these relics or the depiction of desecration of holy sites that are important to the Japanese in his game, I do think he's on a ship all by himself, and I don't really think any other ethnic group that has had their culture shown in an Assassin's Creed game actually cares. The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Norse, the Arabs, the Italians, people from the New World, no one really cares about this. So I don't think it's a worthwhile thing to bring up. Just think that there's people who already have a bias against this game and against Ubisoft, that if you have the Prime Minister of Japan coming out and saying that this game is an insult to our country, it's gonna be like, oh wow, look at that. That's how bad this game is. It's like, yeah, but he's kind of alone in that opinion. I don't know. I'm probably eventually gonna buy it. I would like to have seen maybe a slightly different setting in the game. You could have set the game about like 50 to 60 years later, and you could have gotten maybe a really compelling story about Miyamoto Musashi himself actually becoming a samurai that's in the service of the Assassin Brotherhood. And again, we have just enough scant sort of documentation of Musashi's life that it wouldn't be completely preposterous to assume that Musashi actually could have been part of the Assassin Brotherhood in the fiction of the franchise. So just stay tuned, and I'll probably drop the $70 to buy Assassin's Creed Shadows anyway. Remember when games used to cost $60? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Now next, and something that I didn't see coming at all, it's only a matter of time before they bring the dinosaurs back now. Apparently, a Dallas company called Colossal Bioscience is bringing back the direwolf. The actual answer is they brought back some pups that they think may have actually been genetically closer to the actual direwolf that went extinct about like 100,000 years ago. Pups are already 80 pounds at like 2 months old and are eventually going to get to like 140 pounds, which apparently this is because direwolves are slightly bigger than regular wolves. So, before you know it, we'll have extinct species, intermingling and reproducing with extant species, and that's going to be a freaking hell of a ride for the genetic diversity of this planet. This might actually reintroduce the problem of like, yeah, they went extinct, and why do you think they went extinct? In the same way that we don't like it when we bring invasive species to another part of the planet because it causes real problems. For example, Pablo Escobar's hippos that were imported from Africa into South America are apparently pooping so much in the Amazon rainforest, causing so many algae blooms that it may actually kill the Amazon rainforest and plunge the world into chaos. We just don't think the same thing is going to happen with direwolves. What's going to happen when we bring back woolly mammoths, or giant sloths, or short-nosed bears, or yes, even dinosaurs? Does anyone just also appreciate how like all of the technologies that we were warned about in the 80s and 90s are suddenly like coming true in a way that we didn't expect it? Like when you were probably watching Terminator or Jurassic Park or Alien when you were like, I don't know, in the early 2000s watching it with your dad, or like, the late 90s, and you're like, oh dad, that's cool. I mean, imagine if we had that type of technology. And be like, yeah son, well that's fine, science fiction. And now, not so fiction anymore. This also goes to show, by the way, that like we always think that we're gonna enjoy these types of things. Like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring back the woolly mammoth? Wouldn't it be cool if we could bring back the dodo? Wouldn't it be cool if we can create like a robot that can do all our chores? And it's like, now you realize there could actually be a robot that can do all of your chores and do everything that makes you you, and suddenly it doesn't look so appealing anymore. But apparently these dire wolves, like again, we don't know what actual dire wolves looked like in every respect. I think they had to maybe splice some genes with currently existing wolves because you can't create the DNA completely. But this is just, I mean, as long as you do it the right way and you keep it in a controlled environment, because I think the worst possible thing you can do is allow these new species to roam in an environment that either is not suited to them or they're not suited for. So, I mean, I would say that I trust, the brains and scientists of these companies to, keep the whole thing under control, but honestly, I don't know anymore. All right, speaking of other flops that failed miserably, Snow White. Do you remember when Snow White was announced about a year or two ago and they thought about replacing the name of the 7 dwarves with the 7 magical people? and I hate, I really hate to say this, Rachel Zegler, I'm sure she's a nice girl, I'm sure she's, really friendly and all that, but you also see that meme where it's like, there's the beautiful princess that is pronounced to be the most fairest in the land, and then there's like the evil witch who's jealous of her looks, and you just look at that two pictures side by side, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I get why they would say that. I've said this before, but it's like, Disney movies are another case of just saying, yeah, you could make a live action remake of every single animated movie ever made, but should you? And more importantly, what's the purpose of making it live action? I actually thought about this a while back, even when like something like the Avatar: The Last Airbender film came out by M. Night Shyamalan. What is the purpose of making the film live action? The usefulness of the live action film as opposed to the animated film. And you could say the utility is in then seeing this story sort of come to life in a way where it's like, now if you're thinking if this story was actually real, this is how it would actually be real. And what I say to that is just kind of to say, all right, but you have to make it feel like the actual animated film. In other words, some people say, oh, I need to take this fictional sort of costume or weapon or idea and I need to translate it into what it would look like in the real world. Whenever you're gonna design a fictional or animated world and try to bring it into the real one, through a live action adaptation, you shouldn't be asking yourself, what should this look like in the real world historically? Instead, ask yourself, no, I want to take that exact design, color, shape, texture, and all, and just make a real life copy of it. Don't take Aang's tattoo and then turn it into a bunch of crazy writing and decals on his forehead. It looks cool, but it's kind of betraying what that is. It's like, that's not really Aang's tattoo. That's something that's made to look like Aang's tattoo, reinterpreting it in a proper historical context of what some sort of Himalayan or like, Near East Asian type of tattoo would have looked like. Give us what it would have looked like. If you have these 7 dwarves, don't take 7 people with dwarfism. No, do what Peter Jackson did in the Lord of the Rings films. Give them a bunch of makeup that has them look like dwarves and give them the exact same clothes that the dwarves had in the movie. Take everything in the film and just translate it directly into, this is just the real world version of it. Which is a very subtle design point that I don't think many movie makers are going to really grasp, but it's one that I think is the most important in translating animation in any form into live action. Even though I didn't see it, the newer Avatar: The Last Airbender TV show that premiered on Netflix that I still haven't watched, at the very least, that seems to understand that idea more, even if it misses other parts of the storytelling and the writing and the acting and so on and so on. As I've said, I think Lilo and Stitch looks to be the only one that's actually going to be good because there's not a whole lot of fantasy stuff to interpret. It's just Hawaii in the late 1990s, the early 2000s. So it's not that hard to just make it real and all that. All right. Tariffs. This is actually the one topic out of the weekly update that I just don't understand because I don't have like firm enough understanding of economics and how tariffs play into a country's economic well-being. So allow me to just ask some questions and maybe if you're someone who can give some answers, just maybe try and help me out with understanding this. Trump's whole rationale, as I understand it, for increasing tariffs on all these other countries is that the US has been losing money on the grand scale with how much money it pays out in surplus to other countries who put high tariffs on us. We, in turn, are retaliating by saying, no, we're gonna pay you a whole lot of money if you pay us a whole lot of money for the stuff that you want to buy from us. In other words, Trump, as I understand it, is trying to level the playing field with saying, if we've been paying or losing a whole lot of money to other countries because of their tariffs, it's time for those countries to lose some money when it comes to giving us the things that we want from their own goods. And the usefulness, as far as I see in that, is that it maybe creates a more fair playing field for international trade. The thing that really no one talks about is that my hope is that like the long-term effects of these type of tariffs will encourage more of the sort of necessary goods that Americans need to be produced here. If there is a country such as Japan that makes like really nice cars, or Nintendo Switches, or China with their GPUs that they've been making and outcompeting us in microchips, then fine. But if it comes to, let's say, Chinese clothing, Chinese, material goods, or, Chinese, anything plastic really that's made in all these Chinese factories, I think it would be better if that industry would be brought back to the United States and it would be made cheaper. Let the Chinese produce necessities for the Chinese. Let the Japanese produce the necessities for the Japanese as best they can, and let the Americans produce their goods in their own country that they need. This is the same thing when it comes to just companies trying to cut corners because labor is cheaper. And maybe I'm not exactly sure how tariffs and labor play out, again, on the macro scale. Maybe on the micro scale, it's easy to get away with, having some outsourcing to other countries, but on the big scale, it just doesn't work out long term. So I admit, I don't really know a whole lot about tariffs. I just brought it up because it's been in the news recently, and I guess I'm fortunate enough that I don't experience a lot of the effects of it, but let me know down below. I mean, have tariffs caused you to worry about your ability to retire? Is your business suffering? Are you unable to afford things that you were used to? Just let me know, and also let me know what you think of the tariff situation overall. And now for the issue that is going to piss me off the most. A few months back, I made a video describing why I thought that the reaction to Luigi Mangioni, I sort of understood both reasons why people were really glad that he had killed this United Healthcare CEO, and then people were really upset that people were getting happy because you had people like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh basically saying, if you call yourself a conservative or Republican, you cannot be celebrating the fact that a man was shot for no reason. Now, here's the thing. I said in that video, a man should not have been killed. This is a country where we have laws, we respect human life. You don't kill someone. So I do want Luigi Mangioni to face justice for what he did. I think I could go so far as to say that indirectly, this United Healthcare CEO, who has a company that makes money in part by denying paying customers life-saving medical treatments and medications, or at least someone who makes his living in trying to encourage his company to find reasons to deny people life-saving medical treatment and medication, this United Healthcare CEO is indirectly also a killer guilty of murder. Of the same variety? No. I mean, again, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right? So, some conservatives have a problem with the fact that abortion is legal. So abortion is legal, it's okay. Well, no, it doesn't make it okay. And what I'm saying is the United Healthcare business model of trying to find reasons to deny people life-saving care and medication, that's also wrong. But of course, we have a system where this man will not or would not have faced penalties for it. Apparently he was being audited, or something was going to go down that people had suspected that basically because the CEO was having his estate audited or his personal finances audited, that he realized he was going to go away for the rest of his life, so he thought it would be better to let himself be eliminated because he knew he was going away for the rest of his life. Like, I'm not so sure that any guy would have the balls to do that and just like willingly let themselves be assassinated, so I don't think that's true. What I do think is true, and this I would say directly to Attorney General Pam Bondi herself, if you think that Luigi Mangioni is deserving of the death penalty for his murder of Brian Thompson, then what I want you to do is find every other convicted murderer for the first degree in the custody of the NYPD or state police, and I want you to put them on death row as well. Why? His murder of a high-profile individual like Brian Thompson does not mean that he is any more or less deserving of any other punishment that would be meted out to someone convicted and found guilty of murder in the first degree. You can't tell me that somehow because he killed a CEO that he's deserving of the death penalty, whereas the 20-something-year-old coked-up psychopath who decided to kill an NYPD officer who's just maybe his age or even younger, you can't tell me that that guy isn't also deserving of the death penalty. Either all of them are deserving of the death penalty, or none of them are deserving of the death penalty. Personally, I'd rather see Luigi Mangioni get life sentence or life in prison, whatever punishment you are going to mete out to any other person convicted of murder in the first degree. To even suggest that we should give him the death penalty speaks to me that you're playing favoritism with people's lives. Brian Thompson's life was not any more or less valuable than any member of the NYPD, a single mother, an elderly grandma, nobody. So that just really pissed me off when I heard about that. I saw when that story had premiered on the nightly news, and it almost sounded like the Pope had just landed on the moon. It was like this super sensational story, its own custom-made title card. It was the only thing that would be covering the news for weeks. I live near New York. I'm not in New York, but I live near New York. And people get killed every other weekend. And sometimes they find the killer and sometimes they don't. But if you do, and you decide to put him on death row, you do the same to everyone else who's been convicted of the same crime. It is, to my mind, an example of, the favoritism that we show. We're just high-profile individuals. I guess what, you think their lives are worth more than mine or any other common person? It's just disgusting to me. I just can't stand it. That's the one thing of all these headlines that's bothered me the most, the one thing that I'm unable to get over. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Mangioni is deserving of the death penalty? Do you think that favoritism is being played there? Or do you think that no one is deserving of the death penalty? And I think there's sympathetic reasons as to why you may feel that no one is deserving of the death penalty. But thank you guys for watching, Mevanites. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Kind of a long one. I had planned on making this earlier, but busy schedule and all. But I always appreciate your patience and look forward to seeing you guys real soon. Thanks.